connect with them because he knew what was in them. So what's wrong with their faith? Are there any clues here? There are. There are two. The first clue is the reference to the word signs. We'll come back to that one. And the second clue is the context of Nicodemus. Now you all know, and if you don't, you will in 10 seconds, the chapter divisions in the Bible don't mean anything. Okay? That's not an overstatement. Well, maybe it is, depending on what mean means. They're not original. They're not inspired. They were added 1,000 years later. Okay? The chapter divisions are not that important. When Isaiah was writing and John was writing, they're just writing. They're not sticking in verses and chapters. We do that to help us navigate, get around. So ignore them when you're reading. It helps here. So what's the context? Nicodemus, I think, is one of those people in verse 23. And the reason for saying verse 23 to 25 is to set us up for Nicodemus. So if you want to see what's wrong with the belief in verse 23, when they saw his signs, then keep reading. All right, so let's do that. So verse 25 ends, Jesus himself knew what was in man. Now there was a man. See the connection? Now he knew what was in man. Now there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. This man came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from God, and no one can do these signs. Back up to verse 23 of chapter 2. That you do unless God is with him. Now that's amazing faith. It's not saving faith. He's not even born again. We know you are a teacher from God. You're not any ordinary teacher. You are from God. They don't go around saying that about everybody. And you do signs, and these are the kinds of signs nobody can do unless God is with him. So, you're from God, God is with you, you're doing miracles. That's amazing faith. And useless, dead, unregenerate faith. That's what I think is going on in verse 23. These are sign mongers. These are sign seekers. These are signs and wonders chasers. Nicodemus and the rest. I don't think Nicodemus stays that way, by the way. I think one of the points of this gospel as he shows up at the end of the gospel is that Jesus did get through to him. So, in John 3, 1-8, I think you have a picture of what's wrong with the people in verse 23 of chapter 2 who were believing on him. That many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. They saw signs and they were excited for him. You really do these. God is really with you. I mean, this is what all Jews believe. This is what all Muslims believe about Jesus. Right? Real prophet, real sign worker, and hell-bound, just like Nicodemus. There was no life. There's no spiritual life. Nicodemus, you must be born again, Jesus says. This confidence about me is worthless. You will never see the kingdom of God unless there's life in you. Seeing me work signs and getting excited about my signs is not saving faith, Nicodemus. Now let me show you this. This may be new to you, I don't know. But let me show you in the Gospel of John other places where Jesus has to deal with this. I'll show you a really shocking one. You may want to turn to this. Chapter 7. I can remember the time I first saw this. It was the spring of 1974. I read this and I said, what? I got out my Greek and said, that's not the verb, that's not the word that belongs there. Okay, so see if you've seen it before. This is John chapter 7. Jesus is dealing with his brothers, his physical brothers, Mary's children. She did have other children. John 7, 3-5. So his brothers said to him, leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples also may see the works that you are doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. For not even his brothers believed in him. What? You mean, surely you meant to say, they said it even though they didn't believe in it. You meant there to be some adversity. You didn't mean to ground their enthusiasm about your miracle-working power in their unbelief. You surely didn't mean to say that because they're unbelievers, they're excited about your miracle-working power and want you to go to Jerusalem to show them to the world. You didn't mean to say that, did you? He did. That's weird. And it's illuminating mega. We're getting light here on what's wrong in chapter 2, verse 23. They believed on him because they saw the signs that he did. And here, the brothers are saying, come on, we've seen your miracles. Go to Jerusalem. Do this publicly. You want to be known openly, don't you? And John says, they're talking like that because they don't believe. Now, if this were a seminar, explain. How does unbelief account for enthusiasm about signs and the desire for them to go public? Or turn it around. How does the fact that they're all fired up about the works that he's doing and their desire is that he go public and get a following, how does that shed light on the nature of faith when it's called unbelief? Here's my answer. It's found in chapter 5, verse 44. And I can tell by the swish of the pages, some of you are interested. How can you believe? This is a rhetorical question. The answer is they can't. How can you believe? This is chapter 5, verse 44. How can you believe when you receive glory from one another and do not seek the glory that comes from the only God? What is that telling us about the nature of true faith? It's saying, if you are driven by a desire for human praise and human admiration and human notoriety, you can't be a believer. Belief is the opposite of that. Belief is when that is shattered in the human soul. It's broken. The craving for human praise and human approval and human admiration is snapped and broken. And we go down and he goes up. We must decrease. He must increase. And the brothers hadn't been.